Hey, Steve. Hey, Steve.
Yay.
March is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can start. Yeah, but.
Yeah.
She was confident.
Okay.
In your exercise.
I know.
And you have a couple other parties people. Yeah, they should be quick. So I guess we can start then if he's in. Is he in?
Maybe.
Mayor,
you in? Well, yeah, what's it? Bill's in?
Yep.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. I'd like to call the December 17th special council meeting to order. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which
which
is
stands one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Sharon, would you please call the roll? Here.
Mr. Fish.
Here.
Mrs. Irish West. Here. Mr. Yankee.
Here.
Mr. Richmond.
here.
Mr. Vincent.
Here. Okay, thank you. We have three ordinances this evening, the third of which is the meatiest. But we'll start with ordinance 2024-61, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Citizens for a one-year subscription for the building department, declaring an emergency. And Council President Yankee is going to present that one this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Spencer. And as you'll recall, at last committee of the whole meeting, the mayor did discuss this. I had the opportunity to speak with Paul to confirm some things. So this would be a new system. The mayor gave us the backstory of the situation with our current vendor, and basically saying sign a 3-year deal and we're going to cut you off. Well, that did happen to a few municipalities. Right currently, we're in the process of retrieving all the data, so we'll be ready. There was questions about possibly, needing some IT assistance, but from my understanding with Paul, CityServe is able to provide that. And one of the benefits we have is the grant. Is it from the county, Paul?
It's from the First Suburbs Consortium,
Okay.
in the county.
To pay for our first year of using CityServe, which is the most expensive year because that cost involves all the initial fees as well. So it would be less expensive in the following year. Another benefit is that there's a lot of other local municipalities that use it. So you need support or just have questions on how to use it, then it would be beneficial. I think it's a great idea, and if it helps improve the process in our building department, then we should do it. So with that, I'd like to declare an emergency.
Okay, we have a suspension of the rules from Council President Yankee, seconded by Mr. Vincent.
Mr. Armorman.
Yes.
Mr. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Irish West. Yes. Mr. Yankee.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond.
He's muted.
You're on mute, Steve.
Nod.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
I'd like to move for passage.
Perhaps second by Mr. Emmerman.
Mr. Armorman.
Yes.
Mr. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Irish West. Yes. Mr. Yankee.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond.
Yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes. Okay, thank you, council. The second one is ordinance 2024-62. An ordinance providing additional appropriations, transferring items already appropriated and declaring an emergency. This one also is going to be presented by Council President Young.
Thank you, Mayor Spencer. So I had reached out, you'll notice there's a lot of items, more than usual on this transfer ordinance. And most of them are to bring the budget by fund in line with the actual revenues. There are a few appropriations that were needed to finish off the year. And I'll just go over the notable ones. Building software is being added to the budget in 2024, since we're signing the contract this year. I did forget to add earlier that the cost will go. That's why we need to do it this year, correct?
Yes.
That and also the current company, we're delaying them as long as possible, but they could just shut us off. So we're kind of trying to get the ball rolling as quick as we can. Service salaries, one more payroll remaining to be posted, and the current budget's close. So we're adding $10,000 in case there's overtime for snow removal or payout of compensatory time in the next couple of weeks. Treasurer personnel, so employees are allowed to cash out any sick leave in excess of 960 hours at the rate of 25% of each hour in excess. This is the first time it's being done in the finance department, so it wasn't budgeted. So we're moving funds to cover that. Legal expenses, there were some legal matters that the law director was asked to work on. So we're increasing the appropriations by $35,000 to account for this and close out the year. Via tax collection, this expense, the expense in this account is a factor of actual collections, since our collections are much higher this year. The retainer to collect these fees is also higher. So that's why I'm increasing that account by $25,000. And as I said, most of the other adjustments are general reductions in appropriations to bring them in line with actual. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second. Do we have a motion to suspend rules? Seconded by Mr. Fish.
Mr. Emmerman,
Yes.
Mr. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Irish-Black. Yes. Mr. Yankee.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
yes,
Mr. Vincent.
Yes. Any questions?
hey, Bill, just one quick question, do you recall the wastewater treatment plant contract services, $125,000, a big number? I'm just wondering if you recall or had discussion about that.
Adam, do you know Prashant?
Yeah, it's the contract that we just signed in November for the sanitary sewer annual program with, can't remember the name of the contractor, but it was just signed in November for next year. So, that was not budgeted in 2024. So we just added
Right.
that amount.
That answers that. Thank you very much.
Well,
I'd like to move for passage, please.
Second.
Motion passes, seconded by Mr. Vincent. Jerry.
Mr. Emmerman,
Yes.
Mr. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Irish-Black. Yes. Mr. Yankee.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes,
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, council. And then the third this evening is 2024-63, an ordinance establishing the permanent appropriations for the fiscal year 2025 for the village of Moreland and declaring an emergency. And I would just say that since we have some of the representatives from the service department, police department, and building department, finance department here, they've been working on this budget for quite a while now. I did prep council once or twice on the direction that we are going and some of the key line items that were going to be different from prior year's budget. And I know Prashant sent out to everybody about a week ago, or maybe a little more, detailed spreadsheet with all the line items. And then he had a couple small edits that I looked at this morning that you had sent out, I believe Friday or no, maybe yesterday, I can't remember. Recently, they're pretty small changes, so if you have questions on those and haven't had a chance, I'm sure Prashant can answer those questions as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Prashant to do his usual presentation to us for the budget. Prashant.
Thank you, appreciate it. I don't think you want to grab the mouse. The PowerPoint clicking from where I'm sitting. Hopefully it works. Okay. So, thank you, everyone. Good evening. So, overall, it's a good story again this year. In general, of course, as you all know, the economy in general, I'm not talking Moreland Hills, I'm talking in general, is really steaming ahead. It's, in my opinion, a little bit out of control. But that's all based on expectations of what's going to happen in the future. You know, we've all heard about lower taxes, fewer federal regulations, businesses are optimistic, so they're all continuing to spend, and so are the consumers. And as you know, 70% of our economy is consumer spending. Of course, on the other hand, you're talking about tariffs, and you know that always has a negative impact on the economy. Most companies are actually positioning themselves to be able to deal with those tariffs if they do happen. Costco, I heard yesterday, is actually planning on buying things that they would have bought next year ahead of time so that the tariffs, if they were implemented, would affect the cost of the customer. So, you know, there's all sides to this. We don't know where it's going to end up. Federal government has seen that inflation was slowing down, so they started reducing the rates, but not as fast. I'm sure you heard the saying that when federal government increases rates, they go up on an escalator, and when they reduce it, they come down on an elevator. It's actually the opposite this time. They increased the rates 11 times between 2022 and 2023 rapidly. And now when it's time to reduce it, you know, they're seeing that, you know, they're being cautious, let's put it that way. We were, of course, beneficiaries of all that happened, just like every other city and town in the US. The federal government pumped in monies. You know, we received some ARPA monies ourselves, some COVID grants, some CARES Act monies, and they were used, you know, advantageously for our community. And of course, the increased interest rates also gained some additional revenue for us by way of interest. We earned almost $700,000 in interest more than 2 years ago. So that's, you know, that was a substantial gain for us. Income tax for us, and, you know, we have some slides, we'll go through those. I'm just talking in general. Income tax this year has been an anomaly. I have not seen this kind of jump in a few years. You know, I've been in the village since 2000. I've not seen this type of an increase since then. So as I am conservative, you know, I discount that. You know, I think it's a one-time thing, and maybe next year it will correct itself. So the budget is prepared very conservative. I'll just say that. You know, hopefully we end up better than what I'm saying it will. But my job is to also show you what the worst case scenario is. If we go down in income and our expenses keep going up, well, here's where we would end up. Right, so that's part of the exercise we go through. We can predict what's going to happen next year, so we are looking at it, you know, as best we can in today's dollars. There you go. All right, works. So talking about 2024, our general fund revenues. As you know, income tax is our biggest source of revenue. It's up by almost 23% this year. And that's about $1 million for us. So that's additional $1 million. And that's one of the adjustments we made in the appropriations that Mr. Yankee just mentioned, was to increase the retainer that we pay RETA to collect those taxes. There's a 3% fee that we pay RETA to process and pay up our taxes and administer our tax laws. It's a retainer. At the end of the year, they true up, and usually the actual cost of collections is less than 1%. So, and you know, most communities who are part of RETA know this, that they can't operate a tax department for that low of a cost. So it's you know, it's beneficial to be part of a collection agency like that. And so this year our income tax was about 66% of the total general fund revenue. Last year it was 62%. The year before was 69%. The year before was 70%. Now, the percentage is a factor of what the total revenue is in the general fund. So as you recall, I did say interest income also went up quite a bit, which also took a portion of that percentage increase. So relatively income tax dropped by that much, but true dollars, it was $1 million more than last year. Property taxes, you all have received your new appraised bill from the county, and you know where it's headed. There's still an opportunity for people to challenge those bills, because they didn't get it out in time, and there was a very short period of time that they allowed the residents to actually contest the bills. I think it ended in August, but now in January through end of March, people still have an opportunity to contest the property taxes. So I'm assuming there's still going to be some of that going on, because it was quite a big jump for most communities. And I have a couple of slides to show you what that means as far as revenue for the village and expenses to the residents. Local government fund, very small portion of our revenues. Admission, it's about 41,000, not much to speak of. Admissions taxes, the ones that we collect from our neighbors, the country club, it's about 90,000 approximately annually. And then Bedford Court fines, this is where, the tickets and things like that, it used to be quite up there, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 a year. The last couple of years since COVID, and this is not just Moreland, it was across the state, maybe across the country, I don't know, it's dropped dramatically. And maybe the chief can tell us what the reason is, but last couple of years, the average income from those tickets is only 15,000. So, okay. The other source of revenue is $1.4 million. Together, it's 17% of our total revenues, and that means that includes interest income. Like I said, 10% this year. It was 45% last year, 18% the year before. Building permits, 11.5%. Even though in this situation, the building permits were the dollar amount was higher because of all the construction going on. But because of the interest income, the percentage is lower. By reimbursement, we get about we collect back 130,000 off the cost of operating our department. It's a 60-40 split. So, and then other includes sale of assets and things like that. I think it also, this year we sold a dump truck for 21,000, a Caterpillar 2002 Caterpillar for 36,000, 2015 Ford Explorer for 13,000, and 2007 F550 for 5,700. So I think there was good demand for what we were selling. There's also workers' comp premium. And we pay about 32,000 a year on that, but some of that gets refunded at times by way of a rebate. So that plays into the other revenues as well. I'm going a little fast. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. Interest income, just quickly, we have about $12 million parked in Star Ohio, which is a money market fund run by the state of Ohio. As you heard me say, the average interest income for the year was about 5.5%. We couldn't find that anywhere else. And, so now that they are also dropping because the federal government is dropping the interest rate, it takes time for them to catch up. If the federal government drops the interest rate today, it takes them almost 90 days to catch up because, they have laddered their portfolio. So we have 90 days to react once the rates start going down and then look for other opportunities. 2 years ago, we were looking for federal home loan agencies and lock it in for 2 or 3 years to get the little bit of higher interest that we can. But we have to look at the liquidity and the safety of the investments as well. And that's, as I was mentioning, we were beneficiaries of some of the federal funds that came our way. We held it for a couple of years. In 2024, we used it to pay for personnel costs, primarily at the police department. So there was $347,000 that was put towards personnel costs in the police department, which essentially ended up reducing the subsidy from the general fund that we normally put into the police levy fund. Because as you know, the levy is not enough to support the entire operation of the departments. Income tax, you've seen these slides before. It's been in effect since 1971. Our rate is still 1%. And this is how it breaks down for us. Changes slightly every year. Maybe it goes up, the withholding may go up a little bit by a percentage point. The $1 million that we collected this year, I was just looking at it yesterday. It turns out that there were 3 individuals that paid $300,000 each more this year. $300,000 in income tax, they paid more in 2024 than they did in 2023. That was a one-time income, right? So again, we all know we can't rely on that. Next year, we don't know if those individuals will be still in Moreland Hills, if their business is going to do as well. We don't know any of that. So right there is that $1 million swing. If it was withholding taxes like a commercial entity, I would say, yeah, let's think about, maybe we can budget for that. But individual taxes is very hard to budget. Here's how it's been working for us all these years. This year, the total collection was $5,498,000. Average number of returns over the last 3 years, about 1,300 returns are filed every year, and that could be a single or joint returns, combination. So, there's fluctuation in that amount that I put up there for 3,290,000. Oh, I'm sorry, $5,498,000. That's with all revenues in. Rita pays us twice a month, once on January the 1st of the month, and once on the 15th of the month. So now we have the December 15th collection in here. So that's our annual collection for this year. So there's no more to come from that revenue. Again, slide that you've seen before, 92%. Have a gross tax rate higher than Moreland Hills, 92% of the 60 communities in Cuyahoga County. And the 1% that are, Moreland Hills is 1%. There's Bentleyville, there's Pepper Pike is one. Gates Mills, 3 or 4 other communities. Okay, property tax. Our millage hasn't changed. If you recall, when we passed the police and fire levy a few years ago, the first time around, it was passed as a regular millage. It was put out to the vote of the people. And every 5 years, we were going to the ballot and trying to renew that. At one point, it was decided that we just put it in as a charter millage, which means it's voted in and it's there until it's removed by a vote of the people again. So there's general fund gets about 4 mills of the property taxes. Bond retirement, we don't have a bond outstanding except for the property improvement bond that was issued in 2018 or 2016. So what happens there is instead of putting money in there and putting millage for the bond retirement fund as part of our certification for county, we just take the money from the general fund as and when the debt service comes up, and that's twice a year. So that's why you don't see, that's why you see a 0 mills in there. And then over time, once the debt is paid off, that will be 0 mills. We won't have any outstanding debt to speak of. Police and fire levy, the 3 mills and 3 mills together with the 6 mills that they currently get. And then the police pension fund gets 8.3 mills as well. Total mills is 10.3. All of it is charter mills. What that means is every time property valuation goes up, the revenue goes up. If the property value goes down, the revenue would go down, which is unlikely to happen, but it's a possibility. And qualifying versus non-qualifying. Back in 2015 or 14, the state passed a law that says any levy that was passed after that year would become a non-qualifying levy, which means prior to that, any levies were split between the state and the residents. The resident would pay 92.5% of the actual millage that it would cost their property. 8.5% would come from the state. So the state was actually subsidizing a millage that was put on the ballot. Starting with, because they were also facing some, downgrading their revenues and so on and so forth, they decided to stop subsidizing the levies that were being put on by villages and the cities. So going forward, 100% of that is borne by the resident, any levies that are put on. And that's the difference between the qualifying and the non-qualifying. So we talked about this, 2024, we had a sexennial reappraisal, occurs every 6 years. This time it was much larger than what we've seen in the past. That's their approach. People still contest it. They say that that's not really comparable. If you go up down your street, you look at your property and you see a comparable property, you might say that that's not, how come their home is not? But then they take into consideration other factors such as how much more home improvement you have to do to your property. There's a roof replacement or a driveway replacement that needs to be done. They would take that into consideration if you contest it. Overall, communities experienced a 32% increase in the county. Ranges from 15% in Honey Valley to 67% in East Cleveland. Now, just when you look at these numbers, you're like 67% in East Cleveland, that just makes no sense. But you just are looking for more delinquencies to happen, So it just seems weird that they came up with that. Moreland Hills average increase was about 28%. I'm sure some of you may have already heard from the residents. Talking about town yourself, saying, what is going on? Here's the, I don't think you can see that. I can't see. I have it right in front of me. So our current valuation is 303 million, and it jumped up to 384 million. So that's the jump that we had with the 28% increase. Estimated revenue increase is about 839,000. Based on if nobody contests their valuation, if it stays where it is. Moreland Hills could potentially get about $839,000 in additional property tax revenues. Here's how we assess value.
Sean, just a question on that. The school levies are different, so they don't get as much of an increase because the school levies are not charter levies. So but we're able to take advantage of it because it is a charter levy.
Yes.
That's why we get that. Otherwise, because usually once they pass a levy, that level has to remain flat, even if property values go up.
Correct. Yeah, you're referring to House Bill 920, which
Yeah.
levels the playing field. So once you pass a levy, whatever revenue it's generating in the year the levy was passed, it stays that way.
It stays
even
that
if the property values go up.
Yeah.
Except for charter levies that we have. So total property revenues, total property tax revenues, it's going to be about $3.8 million. Here's how it's broken up. General fund will get about 1.5 million. Police and fire levy 2.2 million, and the police pension about 112,000. Here's the increase that the funds will see from the potential increase. General fund will see about $325,000 more coming into it by way of revenues. The police pension fund will get another 24,000. The police levy will be about $488,000 additional revenue. Again, what that does is reduces the subsidy that the general fund puts into the police levy fund, because we still have to subsidize the levy. Now, because we're doing the budget a little bit earlier this year, some of this information we couldn't get from the county because they haven't updated. But the breakdown between the property values in Moreland Hills Orange School District versus Moreland Hills Sugar Falls Exempted School District. There's the breakdown of parcels, 1,400 parcels in the Orange School District and approximately 411 parcels in the Sugar Falls School District. The tax as a percentage of market value, that has not been released by the county yet for next year. They usually do that at the end of, usually in the end of December, first part of January, so we won't have to. Same thing with this information that they update on their website, but they haven't done it yet. And they will do that sometime in the next few weeks, I think. So I haven't been able to update that information. Really quick, we'll go through some of these sources of revenue. Local governments ones we talked about, it's really not a big revenue source for us, but you can see it. And, it's enough to buy one police car and take that.
Where does that come from then? Local government, what does that mean?
That's just the local government fund is something that the county shares. So it's monies from the revenue sharing from the state that goes to the county. And then the county redistributes it based on complicated formula of, population and income. Here's the 2024 operating expenses, and that includes the general fund and the police levy fund. Those are the two main operating funds. 64% is obviously cost of providing the service. We don't manufacture a product. We have people working that provide the service. So that is obviously going to be our highest cost center. Capital is 3%. That includes the capital equipment that we purchase, or vehicles, or anything like that. And then other is 2.2 million. Other includes any contractual services that we have, the supplies that we purchase, to provide the services, including salt.
Would that include like the road projects?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. This is only general fund operating and police fund.
Okay.
So the infrastructure is a separate
Oh,
outside of this. If you add that to the mix, then all the percentages would change and the personnel would drop even. Personnel costs, that's what it's made up of. We've talked enough about healthcare in the last month or so. We're very excited. And salaries, wages, the cost of operation is going to continue rising. We know that. Personnel. Unless you hired somebody else, chief, in the last couple of weeks that I haven't seen yet. Other costs are contractual, utilities, supplies, fees, and so on and so on. Okay, and we're going to the infrastructure. So, Jerry, next year you gotta get a clicker. This is not working.
Write it in the
I'm
budget.
struggling with
I
this.
know.
It's not in the budget.
I only had 3 more months.
I know. All right, so infrastructure, obviously we do a good job at that. Since 2000, we've had about $30 million of infrastructure projects. And then outside funding is about 7 million. And every year, Jeff and his crew are, able to bring additional outside funding, so it does help a lot. So average construction every year is about 1.2 million, and that includes roads and sanitary sewers and pump stations and everything. The whole game.
So the 30 includes the 7, or is that netted? Is that
30 is
paying 23?
It's included.
It's included, yeah. Really good chunk.
It's a good number.
Impressive percentage, isn't it? Yeah.
So this is what Jeff, I usually ask him for a 5-year outlook of what the infrastructure costs are going to be. And this is what he has slated at this time. In fact, he sent me a text today saying, hey, can we change our budget for this year? I said, nope, it's already it's on council's agenda, I can't do it. So, but just so you know, I mean, I was just kidding with him, but you know, if costs come in higher than he's anticipated, we would have to come back to you for additional ones. But the one item that he was looking to change was Jackson Valley treatment plant. There was some project that he was going to do there. Ron, do you know what that is? Jackson Valley.
Does it have to do with water flow testing?
Yeah, I think so. So I think he gave me a number of 195,000, something like that, which is in the budget. But he thinks it's gonna be a little bit higher, so right now, we just still have that same number.
Don't worry, we're gonna build it in like the sidewalk thing, so I think we're probably gonna cut that out. And then you put about 125 in there for that, so. The crosswalks, I mean, not the side.
Oh, yeah, that's in there.
That's the crosswalks he threw in there, you know.
Capital and equipment. Okay, so here's what we currently own. Vehicles worth about $2.9 million. This is all insurable. Schedule of insurance. Equipment, 700,000. That includes all the off-road equipment that we use. You know, that's not a licensed vehicle to drive on the street. It could be a backhoe or something like that. And buildings and contents, all the buildings that we own, including the pump stations, insurance value about $14 million. Off that, service department has about 19 heavy and light duty trucks and trailers, valued at about 2.3 million. Police department has 12 vehicles, 489,000, and building department is 1 vehicle. Our equipment replacement fund. As you know, we started doing this in 2014, started to put money aside every year. What we've been doing is, because as you saw, the service department has the majority of the equipment and vehicles, their portion of the depreciation or set aside has been a little bit higher. So we set aside 60,000 from the service department and 40,000 from the police department for future capital purchases. Well, after the purchases that we made for the service department and police department, the balance in the reserve fund at the end of 2024 is going to be 209. Here, since 2014, we had accumulated $868,000 in that fund. Since then, we've made purchases for the service department about 513,000. And then police about 64,000. So the service department is pretty much out of money, you know, from their set aside. And then police still has about 288,000 for any future capital purchases. This is what we used the funds for. In the service department, in 2023, we purchased a rubbish truck, 375,000. And in 24, we purchased a vacuum, which is 137,000. And the police department, we purchased in 2023 a Tahoe, and then changeover cost for that vehicle was about 20,000.
Prashant, do you think we need to look at that? How much we're setting aside and what the mix is
We do.
going forward?
We do. So what I think that there's the proper way to do this is, you know, what we did back then was just an estimate. The proper way to do this is to actually take a list of all the vehicles that we have, look at their possible replacement value. Because those costs have gone up, you know, if you do straight line depreciation based on 150,000 purchase, you will have 150,000 after 10 years if you do 10 years. but the cost could be 250,000. So we have to actually factor that in.
Yeah.
And that's an exercise that we have to sit down and go through, like Ted and the police chief, and come up with a better way to do this. In the meantime, we just, putting numbers aside. And then, so service department did start looking at it. Okay, so I did ask service to give me a 5-year replacement outlook. So again, I'm sorry you can't read this, but in 2026, he thinks that there, and that's Ted, thinks that, he may need to replace vehicles and equipment worth $367,000. In 2027, it's 280,000. In 228, 275,000, and so on and so forth. So over the next 5 years, an average replacement value is going to be about 267,000 for the service department. Now, as you saw, we don't have that kind of funds in the equipment replacement fund for them. Now, here's the thought. If you all agree, it just came to me while I was showering the other day. Think about this stuff all the time.
TMI.
Yeah. Sorry. You saw one slide that showed the additional property tax revenues. That's 367,000 is from going to the general fund. The depreciation for service department vehicles does come out of the general fund. So right now it's 60,000. And if these equipment and vehicles do need to be replaced, instead of taking the hit one time, you can still talk about, maybe trying instead of extending the life a little bit if you can. This is maybe just a wish list for now, I think, I hope. But if not, that additional 367,000 is, we could start setting that aside and for future equipment, because we know we're gonna have to buy these things no matter what.
It's not a percentage base or not what you said a few minutes ago was some kind of look at all the lists and do some kind of or is that what this is essentially, like the list of all the equipment and the replacement costs? Is that basically what this is?
Yeah, so this is just his, first draft of what he thinks he's gonna need to replace.
Yeah.
And if you take the average of that, it's $267,000 a year, right? So take the 300,000 and set aside, if 2025, whatever he needs to replace can be accommodated, things like that. So that's just a thought. We can discuss it further, but right now that's something that we should probably consider. But good.
Well, the two vehicles for service that have been proposed in the budget, though, they're in there, right? And we do have the funds, because there's a rear loader and there's also another truck, I believe there's two.
They're already in.
They're already in there?
Yeah.
So you have concerns about 25, or are you thinking more about 20?
Future.
Okay.
So yeah, just that's something to think about. If you have an opportunity with this additional revenue, to set it aside.
Yeah.
So.
Oops.
Sanitary sewers and special assessments, this is the infrastructure that includes. Annual maintenance. Since 2016, the capital has been dropped to $200. It used to be $500, if you recall, at one time. And based on the fact that we were accumulating some additional funds in there were sufficient reserves, and not too many projects going on, started dropping that assessment to the residents.
So David, that's what I had mentioned. I didn't know the years. So it goes back to 2015 when it was higher. I mean, that's before I was involved. Yeah, but so I had heard about it, but I didn't know. I couldn't remember. So we did drop it, as you can see, during the 2010s, during that decade.
And so Jeff and I have been discussing this, because the needs for improvement at the pump stations and things, I think it's going up as the infrastructure ages. So we may need to revisit this allocation at some point.
Prashant, the reductions were primarily, right, once we switched to pump stations from treatment plants?
That is correct, yeah, because the cost of operating those treatment plants were higher than the pump station, I believe. So, or vice versa, I'm not sure. But that, so yes, once we changed the infrastructure, the cost did go down, and which is why there was some excess funds sitting in the reserves. And so we decided to share it with the customers. But now, after 10 years or so, cost is going up again. And it's not just the infrastructure itself, it's also the cost of the products and supplies and the services that are being provided has gone up.
I thought what we talked about before was that if we were going to increase the capital, whether we could decrease the maintenance by an equivalent amount. I think that's what we were talking about. And then it was that if on somebody's bill, they're probably not making the distinction between maintenance and capital, and they could see that as kind of net. But I couldn't remember where how healthy the maintenance was.
It's not.
Oh, okay, well then there you go. Let's, I don't want to jump ahead.
Yeah.
But if you replace the equipment, that's the.
Well, I think it's the flexible lights really that are driving the car. I really do for the pump stations. I think it's driving across the capital and
We're spending more because of that, absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, the contractor that have been providing the services to us, their rates have gone up and the supplies they buy has gone up. So it's both ways.
But what's involved, I mean, I know we don't have to get into the details tonight, but what's involved in changing that? We would have to have more discussions with council, we have to apply to be able to do that, we don't have to go to the voters to do it. But that's maybe something that ought to be on the agenda for 2025, discussions about that. What we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, so, Jeff and I have been, like I said, talking about this, so we can put together some,
Maybe facilities can talk about it too.
Yeah.
Something to council.
So here's what the current balances are in the fund. The maintenance is really down, as you can see. And some of the capital that Jeff has in the future 5 years will probably eat into that. The annual revenue, as you can see, is not, it's only $194,000 based on the $200 that we charge for the capital for. So we'll bring something forward to you. And then,
Sorry, can you go back one more?
Sure.
So for the maintenance cost, I'm just curious how much, if any, was kind of large expenditures that might be one-time expenditures in terms of like sewer investigation and I&I work. I mean, maybe Jeff would know this and maybe a better question for him, but I'm curious because I know we were doing a lot on the I&I work before, investigating that.
We did a lot in
sewer lines, repair work, and right. So I would wonder how much of that increased maintenance cost is something that would really carry through in the future or not.
so it's a good question. And so I think when we bring you the information for both these funds, we can discuss that at length and give you a 5-year history of what the costs have been to operate the maintenance part.
Yeah.
And, if they're just ongoing costs or if at one time, because I know last 2 years, for some reason, Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard there's been a lot of failures, like power surges and little pumps going and that. So there's been a lot more maintenance in those plants over the last 2 years, for sure.
Yeah, specifically with Moreland and Jackson Valley pump stations, a lot of parts, seals, and changing motor heads, and that's not a cheap at all. Investment.
And we do that, or do we do that, we contract that out, or do we do that in-house? You do that in-house, okay, that's good.
Well, I know too, because Jeff, we just had testing done, but he needs to do more testing because they've isolated the areas But now they need to do, smoke, dye, and more testing, and so we still don't know what repairs are gonna be needed for that yet.
Yeah.
He wants to narrow it down more before he starts spending money on fixing stuff. So, yeah, so there's gonna be more cost to research it.
Probably next year.
So I know it makes sense to keep a larger budget in capital because those will come all at once and we're going to maintain a healthy balance. And obviously it seems that the revenue, the average revenue is less than the average expenditures, but where would you want to see that balance? Obviously a balanced budget between revenue and expenditures, but like, where do you want to see that fund at to be healthy?
For the maintenance or?
For maintenance, yeah.
If your average annual expense is 237,000, you at least need that much every year to be in there. And, so it sort of keeps pace with your assessment, because 206,000 is coming in. If your spend is 237,000, technically you could be at zero balance and still sustain it. But for these extraordinary events, you won't have the money for it. So I would say at least 3 times the annual cost of
3 times the
operating
annual
units
cost.
would be the right place to be. Yes.
I'm just, wondering, the average annual revenue for maintenance is 400. And for capital, it's 200. So why are they almost equal for the 3-year average annual revenue? If one is taking in twice as much.
So I said,
If you go back a slide, you said that maintenance is 400 per parcel, correct? Or a couple slides. 400, where capital's 200, so in the 3-year average.
There weren't large capital expenditures.
She's talking
I'm
about-
not.
no, I
talking
think
about the
she's,
revenue.
yeah, she's talking about the revenue.
Why are
So
the
why
revenue?
is that? Why are they
why are
exactly
they
the same?
equal?
That's a big question.
So you might want to recheck that because the current fund.
Yeah, it should be twice.
Right.
So wastewater treatment plant expansion, special assessments. 108,000, 109,000, 112,000. That's the. So.
Grants will give us more.
I think we got a grant for the expansion.
No, so the other part is,
Still talking.
the sewer tie-in. There's like almost $100,000 sewer tie-in revenues that we get when somebody ties into, and that's adding to that average annual revenue. So it's not just the assessment. When somebody ties it, so I'm looking at it
On the capital side.
on the capital side.
So you got a big chunk coming in.
So
got more coming in.
in 2023, there was 91,000. In 24, there was 92,000.
So if we get funding through external funding sources, let's say that we got I think we had some amount of money that went towards the expansion tank, not expansion tank,
Equalization.
equalization tank. I replaced my expansion tank. That's not included in revenue? No. Okay. So then we basically, because we did and have historically gotten some amount of monies,
Not all, I mean, I don't know.
really guess it was just that COVID.
Yeah, I don't think, there's no specific major grants that are
That we
coming in.
normally
That's
have.
why.
But at some point, the dollars from tie-ins, that will dry up, right?
I'm sure.
There's only so many,
Yeah, right.
there's so many houses.
It's fine, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's kind of, for the 3 years is skewed.
so all that, like the new homes are having to pay that, so the Moreland Commons, they're all paying that?
Yes, and then anybody, from outside, I think you had some people from Honey Valley die into small systems. as well.
Okay.
The 10,000, something like that.
Okay.
It's one time.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah. Question. And then outstanding debt, spoke with it there, that's the only bond that we have outstanding. That was the one that we used for the police department and the village hall. The original amount was 1,036,000. We're what we have is about 640,000 left in there. There was a 7-year call feature on that, which comes up in 2025. But based on the fact that the interest rate on that bond is only 3%, it doesn't make sense to pay it off because we're making more money by keeping that in investment, so. And then those are the loans that Jeff usually ends up getting, low interest or zero interest loans. Reserve balances as of today. General fund, that hasn't changed. We haven't put money into it every year, for the last 3 or 4 years. $2.5 million.
But it doesn't sting, it's all here. Yeah, maybe it's
Something like that.
it's harmless.
Yeah, good luck.
It's a ladybug.
Needs more revenue.
All right, so equipment replacement, as I said, 290,000, that's the reserve. Average reserve balance that's recommended by Government Finance Association is about 25% of their expenses. So we are obviously past that. And this slide now goes from 2019 to 2024. The general fund cash in 2024, and right now, it's a little bit higher than that. I threw a number at it, but as of today, it's about $10 million. Actually, 10.2. And then the reserve fund is what it is, 2,500,000. The equipment replacement is 290,000. So the total reserve is about $12 million, which is 124% of our 5-year annual expenses. Like I said, still a good story to tell. And that's it, sir.
I know council I heard they had questions about particular line items, which I think.
I have all my details with me, but we have Martha. There's legislation.
Yes, we do a legislation.
Oh, okay.
To approve it.
Okay, yeah.
But I know there's some questions, and I think we should talk about the salary, because we approved, a motion was approved for the salary increases at the regular council meeting,
Mhm.
but I explained to them that you also had a plan or a method of offsetting a portion of that to help with our healthcare costs, because that's why we went with a higher increase in the salary.
Yep. So Marcia is going to pass out, a couple of scenarios that we considered, in trying to calculate. These things a little bit. So as you already know, we passed healthcare legislation to go with Cigna because the cost of providing the healthcare has tremendously. There was a 30% increase with one carrier and so on and so forth. So we decided to go with Cigna, which is still a 15% increase over last year. So far, our employees have been paying a nominal amount to get their healthcare in the village. I recently looked at the State Employee Relation Board survey that they do for all employers of the state that have contracts with their employees, police, fire, service, so on and so forth. And pretty much everybody, the average is the employees pay about 12 to 15% of the cost per month. Of that, so, and that's the average. There are some that are higher, there are some that maybe slightly lower. In our situation, I believe we are the lowest in the state. We really don't charge our employees for their healthcare. Plus, we've taken on an additional responsibility the village has by providing an HRA, right? So the employee's deductible for a single person is still $250, where if you go average, other places it's $2,500, $3,000 for a single person. And it's almost $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a family. Our employees are still at $250 and $500. And the village has decided, did decide to take on, when we provided the HRA, to take on the responsibility of the 200, between the 250 and the 3,000 for a single person, and the 450 and the 5,000 for a family. So we were taking on that additional responsibility, in addition to the fact that they were paying really nothing for their health. So it's been a great ride. And I know you want to continue as much as we can. But I think one of the reasons why council decided to consider a slightly higher pay raise was to try and, offset a little bit of that by increasing the employee contributions toward their healthcare. So the mayor asked me to look at it a couple different ways. And one of his requests was to see if we provide a 5% increase. And if we increase the employee contributions, what amount would we increase it by, so that they would end up with about an average of 4% or 3%, right? Which is the average increase in pay raises for us. I mean, there are, I've heard of 4.5%, 5% as well. So what I did was I took the current contributions that the employees have, which is $5 per pay for a single person, and up to $15 per pay for a family of 4.
Right, three, well, actually, 3 and 1.
Or 3 or more. And bumped it up from $5 a pay to $15 a pay for a single person, from $15 a pay to $45, basically times 3. Okay, so that's what it is. If you do that times 3, the employee contribution goes up slightly. And after that adjustment of that three times what they were currently paying, their average pay increase would be about 4.28%. Let's stop, see if that you follow what I'm saying. Okay. And and the other computation we made was take it times 4. So from $5 to $20, from $15 to $60, from $10 a pay to $40 a pay. So times 4, the average pay increase would end up being almost 4%, so 3.92% for the employees. That's the last number you see at the bottom right on both those sheets. Now, based on, employee pay rate is the amount of an employee makes versus the number of dependents they have, that percentage, like I said, 3.92 will vary between employees. Some may have a higher increase, some may have a lower increase, but on an average, it's 3.92%. There are some employees who may end up getting 4.6% net increase. There are some who may get 3.12% net increase. So those are the two options that I came up with. If it's something that we want to consider.
Use a lot more healthcare.
That's a good brand of kid. On your insurance.
On your insurance, yes.
You'll get a tax break too.
It's true. So is either one of these reflected in the budget that you distributed to us, or which one isn't? It's not. So you have not put this in, so that may be the answer to your question, Rick, is he didn't know what to, I guess, what to put in yet, because he wanted to bring this to you guys.
Yeah, just
So this would have to be, this would have to
amounts.
tweak the budget. depending on what version council thinks makes sense, or if you think any of this makes sense, we'd have to incorporate that into our budget. So if we were to approve the budget tonight, which I hope we will, we would need to make a motion subject to the incorporation of whatever you guys approve.
And so Mayor, just so, I make myself clear, so I did put in on the expense side, in the salaries, I have baked in the 5% increase.
Oh, you have?
Okay, but not the additional revenue the village would get by charging the employees this.
Oh, sure.
That part is not it.
Because some of the, it is a little bit, I want to go back through, some of the increases on the expense side don't look like they're 5%. Some of them look lower than that. Other ones actually look a little bit higher than that. There was like a 6.7, there was a 2.7, there was, so that may just be me missing something for sure. Could be me missing some other line that should have added in there or whatever, but just maybe take a scan. I don't know, we can't do everything. I guess, I don't know.
No, I mean, again, this is a dynamic
It's a
document.
budget, right?
Change it in, but I will
Just take a look, yeah, some of the line item
Yeah.
people that I can identify here. It's just like, using Cherry as an example, for instance, I mean, it looks like it went up to 74, it was 72, and that's only 2.8%. You know what I mean? The budget amount, something like that just jumped out at me, it wasn't 5,
Split between two.
No, I know, I added the two together, 37 and 37 versus 36 and 36. So that's why I got the 74,000, you know what I mean? So I just.
I will
as an
take a look.
example, just take a
I'm
look.
pretty sure I looked at, I had 2 different charts going, and I did take the 5% and I added it, but I will double check.
Yeah, just double check that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But, yeah, as far as I know, I have.
We don't want to let Sherry slip through the cracks.
You said like right now, the average person pays 12%.
Towards their statewide, yeah, when you look at the numbers, it's about 12 to 15% of.
Okay, and our employees currently pay what? Less than 1?
Yes.
Okay, so even if we did this, where would they be at?
Oh, it'd still be less than 5.
Yeah, okay.
Well, not either.
As we were talking about being competitive for employees, I think this sounds good, right?
Yeah.
Because not only were we giving them a 5% increase, which is really a 4% increase.
Yeah.
But then we can still say that we have some of the best healthcare. So we're still competing for some of the best healthcare, and now we can show even most, well, I think there were strong salaries before, but even continue to show strong salaries and stronger salaries.
You made the comment, we are the lowest in the state, the cost, would we still be the lowest even with this increase?
I'm
guessing yes.
I
Yeah,
think
if
so.
the average is 12, then
Guessing,
we're bringing the
if
average.
not the
down.
lowest almost.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, I can't imagine having a lot of pushback. It's there.
No, again.
Well, it's still a strong increase. I mean, it's still a 4% increase. So, and it's 4% of what we did. What did we do last year? 3.5.
3.5. I believe.
So it's even more of a net increase than last year was.
And the other thing to keep, I mean, I think the OPERS contributions are based on the 5. Right?
Yes.
So from a retirement standpoint, we're
Right.
based on the higher numbers, so I'd be stocking away
That's true.
based on the higher percentage and that matches.
True. That's true.
Is there anyone have a comment about the 2 versions that Sean provided you?
I have a question for the group, I guess, is just that, are we done with this? Because if
We have to decide on more.
what I mean is like, if we're done doing this, like if this is gonna come up again next year, then do we want to take a more aggressive approach towards meeting the healthcare increases now? And while we're blunting the costs with the higher increase, because who knows what next year's increase will be, right? In terms of, we don't know. So if we have this money that this revenue we're gonna provide, these increases we're gonna provide, and we're gonna try to do this again next year to take another step and blunt it again next year, maybe it's better to do a bigger blunt now. If you follow what I'm saying, like.
Yeah, well, we're able to do the
do
5%,
Right.
do the
Do the-
4 times
Right.
versus.
That's the only question I have in my mind right now between the
Yeah.
two. It's the only thing I'm thinking of is like long-term, if we're gonna do this again, if we're gonna keep trying to kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If we're not, and like, this is, then maybe it's, I know we don't know that yet, but it's hard.
I mean, I would predict that healthcare will continue to rise at a crazy rate.
Right.
I don't know that for sure. I don't know what our premiums will do. I think part of our problem with our premiums is general healthcare costs.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is our profile being a small village and having some big claims.
Yeah.
Right? So if we don't have big claims in the future, maybe we'll have lower increases too. But I don't know. I mean, that data is not really, we're too small to be able to
Absorb it or.
look at a lot of that, like, because there's privacy issues with HIPAA and on that stuff too. So I don't know what will happen. But those are the things to think about.
What
So
what is the
basically-
bottom, what is the bottom line difference between the, what is it, 3.9 and 4.28? I don't have the paper in front of you. I'm not sure, maybe it's on the paper, but what's the bottom line dollar and cents difference between the two percentages?
It's like $8,500 annual contribution.
8,000 something.
Somewhere in there. Seven, 10.
Yeah, I mean, you're shooting for 32.8 here. That was 1%, right?
Yeah.
So for employees gonna go from 15 to either 15 or 20 a month.
Yes. Or. Yeah,
For the $5.
Yeah, right.
It's a pay period.
Pay period.
I'll pay.
Yeah, it's per pay.
Yeah, so it's,
26 a year.
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, to Rick's point, that we are doing the 5% this year. It might be the time to, and again, we can revisit it, next year.
Next year.
Who knows what is gonna happen if we're not in a position to do such a high increase as we're doing this year, then things can change, but the fact that we set the bar for affordability for contribution to healthcare.
Right, because that doesn't go away per se, right? It's sort of, that's the nice thing about this approach is that cost increase is baked into this year's salary and it doesn't, assuming healthcare costs, like let's all imagine healthcare costs and everything. Like then we've taken care of it and then from now on, it'll always just be sort of net gain for the employees when they get raises next year. But like you said, Mayor, that's probably not gonna happen, so we might be talking about this again next year, but maybe we head it off a little bit. Now.
Any other thoughts on it? I'm doing some math.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out overall for the year.
Should be.
So they're out of pocket for a year for the people that are currently paying $15, right?
It's on the annual contribution.
It's the,
Okay.
The fourth column.
yeah, it's a new annual contribution.
Okay. So the worst case.
1568.
So looking at the net percentage increase, if you went with the 3.92%, there are 2 or 3, maybe 4 individuals who would actually be getting less of an increase than they got last year. One at 3.12, 3.43, 3.34, 3.41, 3.33. I mean, that's a consideration.
Well,
That's
it is, and, when, that's one of the things that, when we talk about healthcare, it's the users who pay. So if you have a family, or if you have no usage of the healthcare system, then it makes sense that you end up paying a little more, but that's,
Well, what is a family? Is it just whether you have one child or four, is it the
No.
same amount?
no, I think it's,
Categories, it went
yeah,
from
it's,
Oh.
single, 1, 2, and then 3 or more.
That's great.
Yes,
So
correct.
you pay 5, 10, or 15. Really.
Yeah, like mine, it's just, you could have 30 kids.
Well, this is the same thing.
That's what it's.
It's the same.
Once you get to 3, it's the same.
yeah, we don't
Over,
know.
any 3 and over.
I don't have three.
So,
Well, if you have 3, have 8.
Your tax deduction too, right?
So, there's higher usage is higher cost. That's true.
I'm usually the one pushing for the higher number. In this case, I might push for the lower, just because the first time we're hitting with this, right?
Yeah.
It's a new announcement. They've never had to get this before.
Sure.
You know. I do think we'll have to look at it each and every year though and say, you can't keep absorbing 15 to 30% increases without passing something.
Right. And that's a good approach too, really. I mean, do it, we could flip it around from what I was saying before, really. Taking some away now, but like you said, this is the first year, then we can look again next year. We do that same evaluation based on what real numbers. That
And I
makes
think,
sense too.
still tell people, even with this, you still, that'd be great to know, you still have the lowest cost.
Yeah, of
Say,
course.
of anybody,
And we can say then everybody's still net, everybody's getting a bigger increase than
Yeah.
last year, which is, I think, what you say.
Yeah.
If we
was
was smaller,
the new contribution being,
Smaller countries.
the smaller
three
contribution.
times instead of 4.
So, the average net. percentage-
A or B, I don't know.
The one at the bottom says 4.1.
4.2.
So no-
I agree with you.
To your point, then, nobody's left in the lurch because everybody is getting a larger increase net than they did last year.
And I think
Which
that's what it,
important.
yeah.
It's our first time hitting with this, I think we should be gentle.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wanted to just throw it out there. That's all.
I agree with that as well. And again, it's not a large bottom line difference between the two percentages, but it would be a big difference to the employees.
But it's a step in the direction that I think we're gonna be responsible to taxpayers and have to start to think about more. I agree with that.
Do I need to make a motion for that? For
Yeah.
agreement?
Yes, I think we should make a motion for that. We could make it as part of the
Budget?
budget,
Okay.
as well. I
I do
believe
that.
we could, Bill can chime in if I'm wrong, but I think we could make a motion to approve the budget, subject to incorporating the 4.28% net impact to employees based on healthcare, into it, and then we can push on.
I agree with that, Mayor.
Okay, but before we do that, I guess if there are other questions that people have, I just want to give the opportunity to ask more questions. So for Sean, not that we want to torture him, but if you guys have more questions.
Who's going first?
Yeah, I got them here, but
I just
Some
had
of
a
them.
couple things that jumped out for me. Page 2. And I apologize if this was covered at council of the whole. But I wasn't at, so just give me a brief summary. The finance specialist PT, is that a new position we're budgeting?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I should have brought it up. Yes, so, one of the things that the mayor and I have been talking about is succession plan in the finance department. I'm not I'm chicken anymore, and Marcia may not be here for long either, so, there's future plans, and so we want to make sure that we have somebody in the finance department really trained. And do everything that Marcia does, which is possible, but really does. So that's the reason for that position. We don't know when we're gonna pull the switch on, but.
Sorry, Matt. Then there was, I think, 110.
Software.
Software, a big number.
That is a big number, and so what building department is doing, we are sort of facing the same situation in the finance department. We have a 20-year-old software in the finance department called SSI, and they, just like any other software company, they're moving away from what they have now. They're not putting any resources in training or supporting it, and they've been trying to push their clients to this something called VIP software, which is the next step up. So other communities have switched over from the software we have over to the VIP. We haven't done it yet. Now I think we probably should at least consider this year, because the one we have is coming close to end of life.
So would this be 110 all at once installed on your computers, or a subscription over several years?
It's once with all the modules that we want, payroll, purchase orders, and everything else, and then annual maintenance that goes with that.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
high.
But that's it. I'm going through a $5 million conversion in Westlake for the software. It's not, I mean, it's just not, nothing's cheap anymore.
Yeah.
I think we can also, Jeanette, implement more automated processes. I mean, today, we typically, not that we can't, Marcia, right, but we typically do not do ACH payments. We write checks for everything. We approve everything manually, so I sign everything, which is fine. I mean, I can sign everything, but there's also, I think, ways to do things electronically. I did things a lot differently because I approve all kinds of things in my job, you know, and sometimes it required a wet signature, but not all the time. I mean, there are just certain things that I think, as we upgrade to newer software, we're gonna be able to take advantage of efficiencies that we can't today.
I mean, just the fact that, you know, you can digitize everything, requisition to purchase order to checks, everything will be available in the cloud.
Yeah.
You know, storage, you won't have to worry about that, plus all the paper that we keep, you know, like the mayor said, all the requisitions. So
Better reporting, better budgeting, better budgeting, I think, too, because, I mean, Prashant's doing this separately on a spreadsheet, which, you know, now, again, I don't know all the details of the software that he's designed to upgrade to, but it has capabilities of budgeting within the software, which we're not doing either, so.
Payroll, right now we
I'm
have,
not criticizing. I'm
Yes,
just-
yeah, I'm just saying, I'm excited, yeah, I know it's not normal, but I think there's opportunity to kind of expand,
for
if you
sure.
can move forward with more modern process.
No. Definitely. And then I just noticed the conference expense and travel. I didn't know if there were,
in,
in a couple different areas. I noticed there was, some budgeted dollar amounts. I didn't know if there was some plan, or if that was around the new software that needed training, or.
no, that's just any.
I asked him to put some money in for me to take a class in finance, in municipal finance possibly. It's not a lot of money, but I don't know if I'm gonna take it for sure, but if we're gonna go through this transition. I've been working with the mayors and managers. They're creating a municipal finance course with Tri-C. Because there's a issue in getting finance people for municipalities, like, so a bunch of different cities are getting together. And actually, Prashant's been on the committee, or you're at least you've been on there. So they're developing curriculum to try to entice and train people to be able to do these jobs within.
Great.
Yeah. And I know there's a problem within schools for this as well.
100%.
So it's just government finance roles are difficult to fill. And so this is one of the things, and I thought, well, maybe I'll take the class myself. I mean, it's only it's a certificate class. It's not
Gotcha.
a credit class, but I thought, I don't know, I haven't committed to doing it yet, but I thought, if I want to, let's have.
I was just curious. I feel like I may have missed some discussion around, but I just, you know, went through.
No,
it
absolutely.
That jumped out, that wasn't there the year before. It was a big number. I just.
That's another department. I know the police has a fund for that to attend, which I know you take advantage of, and your guys take advantage of.
I think building has some this year, right?
Yeah. it's on it.
Well, it's a plan this year, so it's additional training.
That was it.
You got a couple here. On page 4, the salt amount is 90,000, last year 191,000. So I just wonder if is that okay? I mean, are we getting, I mean, I assume kind of provided that guidance, but,
Yeah, no, I think we,
it's a gamble, I'm sure, every year.
we have encumbered some funds this year, have you already?
We encumbered this out this year because when you guys passed the ordinance.
Yeah.
It is.
So it's already for
It's already, that's what it was.
Next
Good,
year,
that's,
So that's why this year's is so much higher. Yeah, because we didn't buy.
lower.
No, we didn't. Next,
Well,
no,
next year,
25,
this year is higher.
no, 25 will be lower, yeah.
Let's say, I'm talking about 25.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Page 6 on, employer contribution under the police pension fund, I noticed that went up a big jump, 320, is that related to that? Went from 280 to 320, is that related to that law, pending law that the mayor told us about, where we may be mandated to contribute more into the police pension
Yes,
fund?
because.
You're just planning for that, like, just in case kind of thing?
Yeah, and they went back and forth, and it doesn't start until mid-year either, I think it starts in June,
Okay.
but I just threw in, you know, and give them a.
That's good, yeah. Okay. There's this, on page 6, under law enforcement fund, there's this 114,000 unencumbered amounts. What are those, like, are those from these forfeitures and everything? Is that sitting in one of the numbers that you,
No,
okay,
that's specific for the police department.
Okay.
And that's from their forfeitures that they, you know, the task force and everything that they've lost. Occasionally we'll get some revenues coming in from that.
okay.
The money sitting in there and they would use it specifically for their purposes.
So I was gonna ask, like, what can that be used for? Anything the police department needs?
They do have guidelines as to what they could be used with. Marcia and Prashant and I work on that. It's equipment and training and whatnot. We still have probably about, I think, 30 or 40 cases that we're still waiting for judgments on from the feds. And then it is dispersed between several different agencies.
Okay.
So we've gotten, anywhere from like, $5,000 to maybe $600.
Okay.
So when Sergeant Pinazzano left that task force, we were dagged on some accounts. So we're still that money will still come to Moreland Hills.
They'll be, they can buy capital items that
Yeah.
relate to their.
A little extra there that you're not accounting for. And some
Right, no, that's not.
I've got one.
Right.
Bottom of page 12, under the contractual. There's been like 5,000, 10,000, and you've got 286,000. What do you split that?
That's Jeff's capital project for 2025. It's listed on the interest.
Yeah, it's the grinder pumps, basically, right?
Okay.
Communuters or whatever.
That's what.
Yeah. But I do think that was a high cost for, I mean, that's, like the controls for that, 150 and the pumps are 150. Like they're, control the pump costs as much as buying the pumps themselves. It seems like
Yeah.
crazy, like 300,000 just for that part, but yeah, I had the same comment.
Okay, it comes out of capital, so. The balance we saw minus the 286 for next year.
I had one quick question. I can't, sorry, I can't locate it, but at one of our meetings, we talked about, or I brought up whether possibility of increasing the, allowance to our commissions from $750 to $1,000. Was that discussed and or reflected in the budget?
It's not. No, I mean, I talked about that with Marcia. We didn't spend the money this past year. I didn't feel the need to increase it further because we didn't spend it. But the council feels strongly about that, that can be added. I just didn't think it was necessary, so I didn't have them included.
If there's not a need to spend it. I know in the past two commissions I've been on, the village will chip in, on some items that help out, so, right?
One on page 7, the CBI dispatch, Mary told us about that new approach they were doing. And I thought, my recollection was that you were saying it's gonna benefit us because of the approach they were using, but the amounts are going up. So this is like radio dispatch contract, it's on page 7 in that big long list there, it's went from 118 to 150. You know, 118,000 last year, and it's 150 now, so I didn't know if like, maybe I misunderstood, like, and it's, or we're just accounting for that.
Go ahead if you know that.
No, I thought I took the numbers from the contract that we had. Chief, I don't know. if you-
Well, we did go down according to CBD by 8,000 this year. My
8,000.
question to you is because a lot of things, we get our IT services, we get our dispatch services, we get radio maintenance, we get some of our body cam and in-car video storage through CBD. So my question is that all lumped into that sum for CBD?
This is not, this is just the radio dispatch contract.
Yeah.
It's not all the other
Okay,
items that
okay.
you mentioned.
We haven't actually gotten the current price on it.
We don't have it yet.
So,
One concern I have about that is that, some people have pulled out, so, South Russell's pulled out. And they're going with the county, they're already out, right?
Effective 12/1, and they were a $28,000 increase. That's why they pulled out of CBD. We were at $8,000 decrease.
So we
That's what I
could
remember.
be subject, even though ours went down in the old scheme, if people pull out, they have to redistribute the money.
Okay, so it could go up.
It could
again.
go up.
Yes, I got it.
I don't know if anybody else is pulling out, but I know they're already gone.
There has been no talk of anybody that to my knowledge is pulling out of CBD.
So, I mean, if we don't spend that, that'll be good, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. In every so often, every so many years, there's like a few large expenditures that we know weren't included in the budget because they weren't ready for the budget at the time. And then they're kind of, we add them later and said, well, this, why was this in the budget? This wasn't the budget because it wasn't ready yet. So is there any that we're anticipating like that right now that it wasn't ready for the budget, but we know would be a somewhat large expenditure that we know would be proposed throughout 2025?
well, one of the challenges doing it 3 months earlier. is
Yeah, I
that
agree.
Could potentially happen. So.
Yeah.
I can't tell
I'm
you.
just saying about ones that we know of. So because in the past, the ones that we know of said like, all right, well, we know we want to buy this, and I can't remember what year it was. We knew we wanted to buy it in 2023, but we didn't have it in time for the budget. We didn't put it in, but was it the plow truck?
I think it was a plow.
It was a plow truck or something like that. I just didn't know if there's anything known, like items wise, like we know that it's going to be proposed in 2025, but it's not ready for the budget now.
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of any.
Really?
Well, because that would have been, maybe that's with the forecasting that helped resolve that for like the 5-year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So no known purchases, large purchases that we
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So, nobody's come to me and said, okay, we may need this next year, but
I
we don't know what the amount is, so we
Yeah.
can put it in the budget.
I do think as we get better at 5-year thing, like, Ted had that
Yes.
this year, the chief is doing something similar. I mean, his purchases generally aren't as big as these big trucks, but
Yeah.
still, he's looking out multiple years. We'll get better at kind of knowing that. Now, whether we'll know how much it's gonna cost exactly, that's not certain, because I mean, Ted's number's 5 years out. I mean, the truck could be way different price,
The cost differential between a police vehicle Tahoe for 24 and 25 is actually going up like $5,000. We were just looking at the US. So, just in 1 year, it's gonna go up that much.
Yeah.
And they've got a big reserve.
But I'm not aware of anything. I'd like to see it on that 5-year thing. Tell me why this is.
You get like 4.
Is Jeff?
You said we could buy
Jeff has it, so, yeah. Jeff,
it. He saves money this year.
is Jeff's in here? Is Jeff's multi-year in here or not?
No, I did.
It is,
Yes, it
yeah.
is. There's at the back of the page.
Yeah.
Page number 6 and 7.
Yeah, he does it too. And I don't know if he does it for everything, but he certainly does it for roads, which is one of the biggest things.
He's got a pretty good, it's on page, I don't know what page.
Addendum page.
Yeah, exactly.
On page 2.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So it's like the last page in the packet, I think.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, he does have the other stuff here too, actually. He did put it in. So that'll kind of show you what he's thinking.
Yeah, and I had a slide on that. I'm sure you would.
Be interesting to know, because I know we, like, when we did, Chagrin Boulevard and River Road, that was a big, I forget how big that.
Those were big, yeah.
None of these.
1.2, I think. 1.2 million, but we got half thousand.
Yeah.
I think we got 600, didn't we?
600,000, yeah.
So either costs, I mean, it's, projecting for costs to go up, or there's some big things.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna, I mean, we got no money this year. I think I told you guys, we got no money from the county for roads. So we'll keep applying each year, and when and Jeff will apply for Chagrin River Road again, he'll apply for Jackson, he'll apply for Miles Road. I mean, Miles Road to me really needs to be done. But it's a very expensive road, we need to get county support to do it. I mean, it really needs to be resurfaced.
Are we-
as far as I'm concerned?
Are we responsible for all of Miles?
No, a portion of it is Bentleyville, and then it goes into Solon as well. Yeah, and then actually, well, once you get to the bridges, it's still Miles. On the other side of the bridge is Chagrin Falls. That's a tiny piece. Right. But a lot of it's ours. Actually, Miles though is an odd road because even before the bridge, there's sections that turn into Moreland Hills and then go back to Chagrin
Property,
Falls.
the boundaries. So,
Yeah.
look at that.
So it would be shared among all those, but we have a lot.
Well, it makes, I mean, they're doing the bridge removal, they've got all the heavy equipment.
But I'd love to see the rest of Jackson, I'd love to see Chagrin River, and I'd like to see Miles, all three get resurfaced, but we really need to get some county help. And Ted will be out there, Ron will be out there patching again.
I have one more question, so, sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
page 16, the land and buildings, 129 page. On page 16, I didn't see that up in the other. There's actually a spot where it was like, something about the village complex, and it's very little. And then down there, they have the same categories, like the village complex on page 14, and then down on 16, at the very bottom of the page, you got 129,000 for a variety of things. And a building, so I didn't know if those were supposed to be the same number or if it was a.
16.
The 16 is, yeah, you got a bunch of highlighted yellow village hall doors and light poles.
So if you look at 16, I'll try to answer this.
Yeah.
Sean, if I'm
Oh,
wrong.
these, I'm sorry, yeah.
There's different funds, so if you look in the fund column.
Yeah.
Those fund 510, fund 100 are two different funds, so those should tie to the funds in the actual spreadsheet that he
Okay.
has.
So there'd be smaller amounts to that, so, cause it'd be different numbers.
Yeah, no, my number, my page number shows 1, that's why I was like looking for 16 and I couldn't find 16, but. So yeah, so that's the one thing that I changed, and I sent it last night. Initially, they were all budgeted in the land and buildings and, 22,500.
Yeah.
There's $22,000 available in the village complex fund, which is the 510 fund. So I moved all those from the land and buildings, the general fund over to the 510.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or? None. Ready to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm willing to make a motion if there are no other questions.
Really to make a motion.
I've got to add the amendment.
Not really to make it was.
So I'd like to make a motion
You're going to play the second.
to approve, the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2025. Oh, but no, I've got to make the amendment then, right?
I guess that's
That
good.
was approval
Subject.
subject to.
I've got to make it subject to.
That's Bill, I think.
Bill, am I amending the ordinance or do I just make a motion to suspend the rules and then make the amendment and ask for passage?
I think that you can suspend the rules and then move to amend it.
Okay,
Or just move to adopt it subject to, as was described earlier, those adjustments.
All right, well then, with that, I will make a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay.
Another one, I'm not.
Mr. Vincent.
Mr. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Fish,
Yes.
Mrs. Iris West. Yeah. Mr. Yankee,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes,
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
All right, and I would like to move for passage, subject to adopting the salaries reflecting a 4.2% net increase to the employees.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Emerman.
Mr. Everman,
Yes.
Mr. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Iris West. Yes. Mr. Yankee.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
yes.
Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That concludes ordinances and resolutions. So before adjournment, I just wanted to say one thing, which is congratulations to future Lieutenant Scalaro for your promotion. Well deserved. We're excited for you and look forward to working with you. Thank you. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have a motion. Council President, second by Mr. Fish.
Mr. Everman.
Yes.
Mr. Fish.
Yes.
Mrs. Iris West. Yes. Mr. Yankee.
Yes.
Mr. Richmond.
Yes.
Thanks,
Mr.
Sean.
Vincent.
Yeah.
I learn something every year, and I find it very interesting. So thank you for the work.
Yeah, thank you, Prashant.
And if you- I know.
Thanks, everybody.
Because I really like. So I don't sound right.